Welcome to the Bridge the Gap podcast. Here's your host, Dustin Udke.
What's up, everyone? Welcome into another episode of Bridge the Gap. We've got an exciting one tonight. We're going to be talking about music and why music is important, the impact that music has in our life, how it plays a role in kind of everything we do. And when I'm talking music, there's only one person I can bring on. You heard him first. You always hear him first. It's my guy, Kevin, the guy who did the music with Red Eye Music House. They did our intro and outro song. Kevin's the voice you hear there. Kevin, how's it going tonight, man?
What's up, man? I can't do the pitch down voice all the time, or else that would be really sweet. Like if I was, "What's up, Dustin?" I can't like live in that octave. But what's up, man? It's an honor to be here. Dustin, for those of you who don't know, is responsible for getting the word out about Red Eye before Red Eye was Red Eye, before we even knew what we were, because he ran around at the Fantasy Football Expo and told anybody who would listen that they needed to hire me to make their theme song. So I got a lot of love for Dustin for that. That's a big bro move there.
Yeah, I mean, right. And so I've talked about this before on the podcast, but I came to you. We were just talking about other stuff, and I was like, "Hey, you do music. I need an intro." And you're like, "What do you want?" And I was like, "I don't know. Here's two like sample songs I like the intros kind of into, something kind of along this vibe." And you're like, "Done." And then you sent it to me, and I was like, just blown away.
And it's the process, right? And you really nailed it, because the reference tracks are so helpful. And I feel as though, I've spent the majority of my music career, actually the first big chunk of it was musical theater, and then the next big chunk of it was solo recording artist. I didn't get into production until these last handful of years, living in LA, having a engineer and a production partner who kind of ushered me in through the door. And I had other producers who said, like, "Hey man, the way that you craft your music is not normal. You kind of have an ear for production." But I kind of have always just thought, like, whatever. I just have a vision for how I want it to sound. I didn't realize how much of it was production. And I'll tell you what, man, reference tracks and vibes that you're going for, and just honing in, like zeroing in on what it is that you want it to sound like, man, it is such a helpful tool in music production.
Yeah, and so I tell people all the time, like when new podcasts, when I'm talking to them, like, "Hey, if you're thinking about intro music, like just jot down songs that you like." And I've been doing that for a while. Like, I really loved, and so I gave you One of These Nights by the Eagles,
Good
and
one.
also Broadway by the BJs, and it was like
Yeah.
something along that kind of like that cool bass, kind of doom doom doom. And then you guys added the piano in, which I didn't know I liked, and I love it because it gives that kind of Dr. Dre kind of like, and I love that kind of music. So it's like, damn, it just fits everything I wanted. And you and your producer worked magically. You guys were real open about the process. You said, "Here's the track," and I said, "Hey, can you add this, do that?" And then the outro music, I was like, "Hey, just start from the piano, make that the outro."
Yep.
From start to finish, you guys were easy to work with, but also like took someone who doesn't really know music. It's just like, I like this sound. I don't know what this sound is, but I like this. I don't know if that's a bass or a drum. I don't know. I like this sound, but you guys took that and ran with it. So you guys just launched Red Eye Music House. So why don't you tell everybody about Red Eye Music House, what it is, what you guys do over there?
Yeah, bro. So it's funny because you, really quick before I get into the Red Eye spiel, because you kind of touched on something that a lot of people and like producers, creatives, whatever your role is in music or whatever, you talked about. I don't really know what the words mean, bro. I've been doing it for a couple of years now, and I still don't know what the words mean either. Like, we need, like, that's part of what production is all about. Like, we're bringing things from the ether, we're bringing it down into reality. You know what I mean? We're introducing ideas that are in our head into the world. And sometimes
Yeah.
I'll say to my engineer, I'll say, "Oh, I need it to feel more airy. I need it to feel more like water." And that's not a musical term,
It's
but
not a musical term at all.
he's like, "I know what you mean though." And then you just let him cook. And that's the greatness of Toby, who is my partner. But yes, Red Eye Music House is a one-stop shop for all things music. And we work with artists locally. We work with artists nationally, as you know. But our goal is to foster a creative environment that is safe and comfortable and fun, and where you get whatever it is that you need. We have mixing and mastering engineer covered. We have vocal production and writing covered. We've lent vocals, as you know from the intro. I've done a lot of singing on projects that artists will hire us for. And yeah, we're just launching. We're just starting to like ramp it up a little bit, but this is a really exciting time, Dustin, because we really foresee this as not only a place where you can go and receive services that are provided, but also find a creative home if you're kind of looking for that. If you're and that's the beauty of it, right? We've done transactional. I want this, I want that, but a lot of our clients are return clients because of the community that we try to foster.
I think it's great because I think there's a lot of people out there who maybe are more lyrically inclined. Like I'm a writer, so I could write lyrics, and I've reached out to you like, hey, let's collab if you ever need a
I'm
song.
looking forward to that. Yeah, that's gonna be
I
fun.
can't do music. I can't be like, well, this should be an A, and then it'd be like I don't know any of that, but I can help with lyrics, and I can kind of give you like, oh, I want it to sound a little like this, or listen to something like, this doesn't sound right, and so it's just a place where like it is that creative outlet. So if you are someone out there and you're like, hey, I sing, but I don't know how to produce a track, hit them up, right? If you're like, hey, I have this like beat or this, melody or song, kind of chords in my head, I need the other part of it. Reach out if you want to help out with those things, especially if you're in the LA area. Reach out. They're local there, so Kevin and Toby do a great job. I know you did an album there. I know Toby does a lot of stuff. So
Yeah,
Red Eye Music House. You can follow them on Twitter. It's scroll on the bottom. It's Red Eye Music House without the E at the
we
end.
ran out of characters.
That's what happens, right? Or you can follow Kevin at the Buffalo Trill. Or you can follow BTG at BTG Pod, or of course me at the D Unit 13. So we're gonna talk music because obviously you love music. You've done music
Oh
your
yeah.
whole life. I really enjoy music,
Uh,
vast genres. So I think it's a fun topic because music is such a integral part of your life, whether you recognize it or not. Like a song can
Absolutely.
evoke memories, it can evoke feelings, it can alter your mood. So we're gonna talk all those things. If you guys are watching, drop a comment. Maybe just comment your favorite song right now that you're listening to, so we can talk about that. But
Hell yeah.
most weeks we start this with a game.
What exactly is the game?
Well, it is not a quiz or a trivia contest, nor is it a test of brute strength or athleticism. At its core, it's just a children's game, and I would wager that some of you here this evening have played Would You Rather?
Love it.
Would you rather, Kevin? And then the theme of music. Would you rather have an audible soundtrack playing with your life? So you're walking down the street and you're happy, and it's a song that's kind of upbeat, playing. Would you rather have that, or would you rather live in a musical where you and everyone you know are singing a majority of their thoughts, feelings, and daily lives?
Oh, that is such a difficult one because, right, having the music background that I have and being as passionate about music, I've envisioned both scenarios.
Yes.
Right, as we all have, right? We're driving to work and the perfect song is playing that describes the mood. It's the first day of summer and we're driving to the beach. It's the perfect pop song. It's the perfect anthem for the summer day. So that one, I feel like that one is a little more achievable in reality. So despite my desire to have a soundtrack playing and scoring every moment of my life, I'm going to probably choose what I would wager to be the less popular of the choices. And I think I'd prefer to live in a musical because in the world of musicals, Dustin, magic happens. There's fanciful energy. There's any given moment we could break out into song, and that's pretty tight in my opinion.
Yeah, so I love musical theater. I went
The
to a high
best.
school. My high school in PA was one of the best, drama programs for public high schools. We got a lot of
Okay.
Broadway shows on
Okay.
preview. I never did them, but I enjoyed, I took theater for 3 years. I enjoyed, watching theater, critiquing theater. I always envisioned myself as like a director, producer on Broadway of like that kind of role, not an actor or a singer. I'm going to assume if you are in the musical world, you can sing. So if you can't sing and you're also in the musical, you know how to sing and it's not that bad.
Right.
I think a musical sounds cool. Like you're right. There is magic. There is that whimsy. The problem is, it's just long, and so
Yeah.
a 5-minute conversation is going to become a 10-minute song and dance. And although that sounds magical, like, can you imagine going to work and instead of like a quick conversation with your boss, it's like a dramatic back and forth song, like it's it's like a Hamilton song, and then you're like, hanging out with your wife or significant other, and it's like this fancy romance song, and it's like, how was your day? And it turns into this whole big musical about how their day was. Like, it doesn't need to be that long.
That's a really good point, and I do feel like it will make the highs higher, right? Because the birds are chirping and the sun is shining and you're taking in all that, beauty, and you're experiencing it with a song and a violin and a solo. But probably the lows are going to be lower because when you're getting broken up with, a ballad is being sung to you.
Yeah.
A woman is screaming her face off in your face about your flaws and why you are not the guy anymore. And that's
Or for real. I mean, so me and Kevin are both Bills fans. So like the song
oh,
on Sunday would have
come
just
on.
been,
Pain.
I watched Into the Woods with my son. It was just agony. It was like
Great.
agony. It was just like, oh, that's what I feel right now. It's just that
I, I,
heartbreaking, like, oh,
yep. I actually
it's
played that Prince in New York before I left. I love that. I love that role. That's such a good role.
it is
Agony.
a good role. My two favorite roles, if I was ever good enough to play, would be Pippin in Pippin,
Oh, sweet.
or probably Billy Flynn in Chicago. Like I think those are just two like
Dude,
iconic roles that I would love to play.
we have one overlap there because I think Dream Roll is a natural, great like little side conversation within the musical world. Billy Flynn is absolutely very close to the top of my list for Dream Rolls. I want to play either Sweeney Todd or Anthony Hope in Sweeney Todd. I've never been in Sweeney Todd. It's one of my favorite musicals. And I really want to be in Les Mis. I want to be either the his name's Angel Ross. He's like leading the charge. He's like the French Revolution guy.
Okay. Yep.
Or the innkeeper, Mr. Thenardier, I believe.
Master of the House. Yes.
Master of the House. Yeah, those are dream roles of mine. But great call on Billy Flynn. He's just got so much charisma. It's not even funny.
And the songs are just fun. So I'm gonna take an Audible soundtrack. It doesn't interrupt my day. It's there. It does have its downfalls where I can't hide my mood because like that is playing at all times. And people can hear it. So like if I'm pissed off at you in a meeting, I can't hide that because that's now playing.
Yeah.
But again, it's not gonna prolong my day. It doesn't really impact it. It's just there. Again, if it's when you find that right song, when you're like you said, when you're driving and that right song comes on, you're
Oh,
like, oh, this is a banger. Like even if it's a song you don't love, like I don't know, sometimes like Call Me Maybe like by Carly Rae Jepsen is just a banger. Like Party in the USA by Miley Cyrus is just a banger, and you're like,
perfectly fits the
this is the
mood.
song.
You're like, I need this in my and that's the thing with pop music, bro. Pop music puts a spell on you. It
It
really
does.
does because you know what? It is the simplest music, and I'm a sucker for it. I love pop
Oh
music.
yeah.
And I'm the last to knock it, but it also is like, and we'll get into this when we talk about like the science of music, but it's just simple. It's just
Yeah.
designed to sort of just be ear candy. And so you're right, that perfect pop song. And I love the idea of having it score your life, but like, waking up, pouring your morning coffee, you got Mr. Blue Sky playing, you tuck your head in at night and you got some sort of a lullaby playing. It's nice.
Mhm.
And we got Apple Music, bro. We got Bluetooth speakers, bro. We're not that far off. We can make that our reality if we
We're
wanted.
not that far off. It's having someone curate the right song at the right moment is really what it needs to be.
And that's nice, right? And I feel like you'd probably discover a lot of cool music that way. Like if you
Oh,
weren't
probably would. Yeah.
if it wasn't strictly out of your playlist, you'd probably discover a lot of good music. But man, I'll tell you, man, there's something like there have been times when I've wanted life to just break out into song and it just doesn't. And I'm like, damn,
It
like,
does. I
that would have
wish.
been sick if like a flash mob just broke out, or if I could have, sang Maria on my balcony after, meeting a woman or whatever. Like, we all know that feeling, we all have those feelings of elation, and how nice would it be to just, because there's no greater feeling, there's no greater release of self-expression than singing.
Dancing, right? That's part of musical too. Is there's also dance.
Absolutely. And that part, less. I do love dancing, but I'm less into it than I am singing, bro. I just love just belting my face off and just
Yeah.
letting the emotions flow through me.
So let's talk music. What is
Yeah.
where are your roots in music? Like, where did this love of music come from for you?
Dude, I appreciate the question, and I've had to think about it a lot lately, given that, as you know, when you're in the business of something, you do kind of have to be familiar with your background. You kind of have to be familiar with your, for lack of a better term, credentials, right? And I feel very blessed to have gotten my humble beginnings in music very, very earnestly. It started out as just a raw fandom as a kid. Like my parents, my mom was kind of like one of those instilling, every single day when you're in the car is for music, like we got the mixtapes, the mix CDs, and discovered a lot of music that way. My father was he was a trifecta. He worked at a album store when he was growing up, worked at a CD store. He was a radio DJ at a local news station, and
Nice.
he was a sound guy for a cover band. So I got the trifecta there of exposure. And yeah, like the music, I started auditioning for musicals when I was like 12, and I started getting parts, and I was like, oh wow, maybe there's something here. Maybe I have some sort of a thing going on. Went to college for theater. It went great. Really enjoyed it. And it wasn't until towards the end of my college career when I actually got into, and I know you're an advocate for this as well, so I'm happy I can be here to talk about it, but I got into therapy. And my therapist mentioned, like, I was going through a lot. I was feeling a lot of emotions, undiagnosed anxiety, and situations of that nature. And she said, like, you need an outlet. And so I started writing original songs, and that was a crazy, like, next level reveal of, like, oh wow, like there's a whole nother layer of self-expression that acting and theater doesn't really tap into, because it's not as personal. You're saying somebody else's words, you're portraying somebody else's story, but you have your own artistic voice, you have your own stuff that you have to get off your chest. So I started doing that, and in Rochester, New York, I got a producer, a manager, started doing local shows. Fun story and a little anecdote: before I found any sort of success with it, which it took some time, I went viral actually multiple times for being bad, um, which is the ultimate teacher of thick skin. Um, had to learn the hard way that the world wasn't kind, and that people wouldn't be soft about their disdain for what their perception was a lack of talent. I still look back at that work, and even though I became more technically proficient after that and learning what they meant by their hatred, um, I look back at it and I still appreciate the artist's voice. Like every project I've made, especially as the Kid Lavender, I just try to chase that feeling I felt when I first started making music. You really can't explain that elation when you first discover that tool.
Yeah, and it's funny because that brings me, takes me back to the conversation I had with Max Brosmer from Minnesota Go Golfers, who's at senior or Shrine Bowl right now. We talked about his, like, when you're dealing with stuff and it's not perfect and it's not ideal, and you have to develop thick skin, and it does teach you those things. Like, it teaches you things, but also teaches you if you really love something or not. Because if you're getting constantly bashed and you don't love something, you will quit. And I think that's where I think a lot of people think they love something until it's hard, and they're like, "Oh, I don't love it that much." Right? Whether that is you're getting bashed online, whether it's a tough deadline, or right, you feel like you're burnt out. Like, that's where you really find if you really love something or not, and if you're in it for the right reasons. And again, if you're in it for what it gives you, not necessarily what you get out of it, that's totally different. So, like, when we talk about like football content creation, like, I do it because I love it, whether or not people read it or not. I do
Yep.
it because I love it, and my hope is that one person likes it and gets something out of it. But if they don't, I'm still gonna do it because I love it. I'm not doing it because what I get out of it. I'm doing what it gives me. It gives me, like, I put into it because it's a creative outlet for me, not because people are gonna praise me for my articles or my podcast. Right? Like, this podcast is something I love doing. I love talking conversations with people, right?
Yeah.
Music is not a football topic, and this isn't a football show. It's a topic show. It does steer and lean into football a little more than other shows, but it's about talking to people, and it's what I love to do. So whether or not I get 1,000 views or the 34 people that are currently watching, whether we get 10 comments or no comments, I don't care, because I enjoy doing it and it makes me happy.
Yeah.
What's your musical style? Like, what are you listening to? What kind of music style are you into, and why?
Definitely. First of all, I just want to give you credit for having the bravery to keep doing what you're doing, man. Like, I am one of I'm one of the, if Dustin Ludke has one fan, it is me.
I appreciate that.
And the bravery that you have to just keep doing it, and you have the right mindset, and you said it best. If you're doing it for the right reasons, it'll always be worth it. Me personally, so musical style, oh man, let me tell you, Dustin, that is such a fascinating question. If you're asking me, are you asking me what style I like or what style I make?
What kind of style do you? That's two very separate questions. So let's start with what style do you like? Is there like a genre
Yeah.
or a stylistic that you kind of tend to go to? Like, are you a country fan? Are you a classical music? Are you pop? Are you one of these, like, we were at the draft in Kansas City and we're like, who's this guy playing? Uh, it was like Afro synth jazz. And I was like, I don't know what that means, but
Yeah, right. There's so many new genres. Like there's so many words that describe all the different no, I love the question and for what I like the answer and it's so cliche, but it's true. Like I really do listen to everything. My favorites are and it cycles, right? It cycles. But my favorites right
Yeah.
now, I'm always gonna have a massive, massive love for hip hop and R&B.
Mhm.
I love alternative. Particularly like 2000s and 2010s alternative. Like that's like a big 90s. We can throw 90s in there as well.
Okay. So you're
Um,
talking like Soundgarden, Coldplay,
yes,
that kind
yes,
of alternative?
like that kind of alternative, but maybe I think you're referring a little bit more to adult alternative, which I don't dislike. I
Okay.
consider adult alternative to be a little bit more like dentist chair music.
Okay.
With no disrespect to it, like sometimes that's what you need. Sometimes
So
you
the more
want it.
mainstream stuff, right? Like the Dave Matthews, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Dave Matthews, not that's dentist chair music for sure.
Yes.
I'm much more into stuff that's I would say alternative like Third Eye Blind or the
Okay.
Spin Doctors or
Gotcha.
I've been really into alternative punk, like pop alternative punk, like Green Day, Blink 182, the All
Okay.
American Rejects, like 80s new wave music because that was the alternative music at the time.
Yeah.
That's a very definitive and like that genre to me like defines my love of music. Like it is pop, it is rock, but there's this element of theater, right?
Mhm.
With the vocal, absolute whining vocals that are just borderline bad. Like the technique is just bad, but it
Pretty
sounds
bad.
so good. You're emoting so much. The Smiths, The Cure, less so in this group's sake in terms of being bad, but Tears for Fears, like they're probably my
Mhm.
favorite band of all time. You know, but that style of alternative, yeah, I'd say hip hop, R&B, alternative, pop punk. Those are my big ones. Dustin, you got to answer the same question though.
So I grew up on country music, right? So I grew up in 90s
My
country,
least
Garth
favorite.
Brooks, right? Like I grew up Garth Brooks, then I got into Keith Urban, Kenny Chesney. Always loved 70s rock. So,
Mm,
right, we talked like my
so
reference
good.
songs were Bee Gees, Eagles. I'm a massive Eagles fan. I've seen the Eagles, I think, 3 times in concert.
Such
Um,
artists. Such
yeah,
artists.
like there was just celebrity deaths don't really bother me. But when Glenn Fry passed away, I was just like, oh man, that hurts. Like that hurts me because I'll never see him again.
Ah, that sucks.
I love a good like gospel and R&B and worship music as well. And then I do love a good West Coast rap. Like I love Dre,
Mm,
Snoop,
mm.
Eminem, and then like put on some Regulators. Like give me some Warren G. Like Regulators is just
Okay.
a banger. Like I'll put that on. Just that '90s West Coast rap is it. Like that's a mood I can get it on like a good Friday afternoon.
Kind of like a fusion of like there's like a little bit of like funk to it, right? Like there's a
Yeah,
little
a
bit
little
of
bit of
like
funk, a little bit of like gritty, like just bass of like
it's slappy, it's really slappy and like groovy.
the word I sort of described it is like it's dirty. Like it's just not
It
like
is.
it's not your polished like ABBA and like those high polished bands. Like I love a James
Oh,
Taylor. I love
ABBA's
that kind
good
of
too.
folk.
Yeah.
I think ABBA is good, but like they're very like polished and you just like there's no roughness to it. And I love a little like roughness. The Eagles have like this roughness to their music. It's just and it's real. I love real. Like I love what I love about rap is that it's real. Like
It's so
it's
raw.
feelings. It's what I love about like James Taylor and Eagles. Like that's how they felt at the time. Like it's not like hey we need to make a pop song so we're gonna make it. We're gonna make what we want to make and people will like it because it's good. And so that's where I lean. And then I love my dream guest for the show is Ed Sheeran.
Oh
I would
wow.
love to sit down with Ed
That's
Sheeran.
a little surprising. This
And so here's what here, because since I talk about topics, what I want to talk to Ed Sheeran about is starting out as an outsider and then becoming the standard, right? Because when
yeah.
Ed Sheeran came out, he was the outsider. Like his
Yeah.
style of music was very different. And then also now everyone's doing it. So like he
Yeah.
went from being the complete outsider and then all of a sudden now is the A-lister standard. So like I would love to talk that kind of conversation with him. I love an
Yeah.
Ed Sheeran song. I think that's all good. We'll get into like our last bit's going to be we're going to do a draft of artists we want to do the Super Bowl halftime show. So we'll do
That's
a
gonna be
draft of that
fun.
later. So that's going to be fun.
That's gonna be
That's
fun.
where I'm at with music. So what kind of music do you make real quick? Like just tell me what
Right.
kind of music you
For
like to
sure.
make.
Before I tell you, because I will, I always do this. Because you make such salient points and you say such thoughtful things that I just want to touch on it before I move on. And I apologize for that.
No.
I don't know if you're familiar with famous, I would love to say hip hop producer or punk rock producer or any producer, but he does it all. Are you familiar with the work of Rick Rubin?
Yes.
One of my
Oh,
heroes.
I would love to sit down and talk to Rick Rubin. So I read The Third Door by Alex Brandon, and he sat down with Rick Rubin, and the stuff Rick Rubin told him is just amazing.
Sick. Okay, so I read Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act: A Way of Being, and it
Mhm.
completely changed my perception of creativity. It changed my perception of art, of music, of life. And what you were just saying about what's real and what's raw is, and we'll just make it, and then it'll just be good because it's just us and it's real. That is the crux of art. That is the crux of creativity, and it gets lost in the shuffle between people who want to be famous or people who want to be rich. And I am the first to admit at times in my journey, I've been clouded by things along those lines. But really, I would say dating back to when I first started producing music as the Kid Lavender, it all clicked. And I sort of learned that. And it wasn't until I burned down the crops of my life and I decided to plant new seeds. And that's kind of where the Kid Lavender name came from. That was sort of what sprouted. Um, so I think you have a great. I think as a person who your endeavors are not in a field that is, I would say, romanticizing or glorifying creativity, but you are creative with how you approach your endeavors. You're a creative person. And therefore we all are, right? For whatever it is that we do, we're all creatives because we all create.
And I think that's part of it, right? And I think that's why if you look at someone like Taylor Swift, why she's so immensely popular is because her most popular songs come out of her relationships and her real life. It's not,
Yeah.
and I think that's why we
Got to
see
give
some of
credit where
these
it's
other
due. Got to give credit where it's due.
her music is like, because people go, oh, this is about this boyfriend. It's like, okay, like someday we're gonna get the Travis Kelce album and it's gonna be phenomenal, right? Because it's gonna be the highs of like watching him win Super Bowls, but also the lows of like him never being around because he's at training camp. Like it's gonna be
Yeah,
that.
that's real. That's
And
a good
it's
point.
real. But when you get people who just, one of my favorite movies is That Thing You Do, Tom Hanks, Tom Everett Scott.
Classic.
Love to get Tom Everett Scott on here as well. Um, that movie is based on the band The Wonders, and they have this great song that they wrote, and it was them. And then they get to the studio, and they're like, the label is like, no, you need to do this, and they're like, that's not what we want to do, and they fall apart because they're not making something real. It's just
100%.
churning out hits just for the sake of making music, and it's like they wanted to make something real and something that was them, and the labels
Yeah.
don't know this is what you need to do to capitalize to make money. And I think that's where we see a lot of these artists and bands go wrong, where they just like, oh, this is what I have to do to make money, and
Yeah.
this is what'll sell. Like, in that movie, it's like, well, we're going to record that thing you do in Spanish. It's like, oh, that's just so derivative of everything. So,
Yeah.
real quick, what kind of style of music do you make? Like, what do you prefer to make?
Awesome. So the Kid Lavender, so when I'm doing my solo recording artist work, my first album Seasons was very much inspired by like experiences that I was going through in life, and I was observing the cyclical nature of life and lessons and all that. So I would say a lot of the times if I were to categorize it in a style, like if I had to, because I think I am very much anti-genre. I think a lot
Yep.
of my work will speak for that. If I had to categorize it, I'd say indie, alternative, maybe a component of hip hop and R&B, and um, my newest work. So I have an album coming out in a couple months, and I have one single out from that album. It's my second studio album. I don't know if I've said the name anywhere, but it's called Tanaka.
Okay.
Tanaka. Yeah, it's an acronym. And if you want to know what it stands for, I'll tell you. But if you want to not and listen to it and see if you can figure it out, because I'm gonna try not to broadcast it. We'll see.
Well, let's leave it a mystery for now.
Let's leave it a mystery for now. But the style is very alternative rock, pop punk.
Okay.
I kind of was just I was very steered in that direction, just kind of as an intentional means of just breaking up the sameness and the monotony of what I was doing. Not to say it was monotonous whatsoever. There's 5 genres on my debut album, but I wanted to, whatever I did on my first album, spoiler alert, I just wanted to do the opposite. And so I think you'll find that on Tanaka in a good way, because it's still raw, it's still authentic, it's still honest, but it's completely different.
That's gonna be good. I can't wait for that. When's that come out?
I don't have a date for it yet, but I'm hoping that it's out by March or April. It's like
Okay.
that's the fingers crossed. We got a single coming out within the next month or so.
We'll be looking forward to that. We'll
Single
blast
number
that out
2.
around here for you.
Hell yeah, dude.
So, why do you think music is like an essential part of the human experience? Like, obviously music is, dates back to wherever. Like it's so old. It's, you know, when you get into like rhythmic drums, when you like the first flute was like a bird bone. Like, why do you think music is so important to the human experience as in general, like especially in our day and age?
And I really I love the question, and I want to address it in a couple different ways with a couple different angles. First and foremost, it's that need to express, Dustin,
Yeah.
and I talked about it with when I was in therapy, and the therapist said you got too much going on, and as an actor, like there was a point in time from maybe 2006 to like 2017 where I was never not in a show. I was never not portraying a different character, and I loved it. I loved the camaraderie of theater. Like there's really nothing like it. If you ever get the chance to audition for like a community theater show, listeners or Dustin, please try it, because it is just a next level experience. The familial communal component
Yeah.
is you can't replicate it. But you're also, especially when it's a lot, and I was doing it professionally, so there was 45 performances, 10 show weeks, 2 show days. It was so draining, and it was so uh talk about monotony. There really, I don't know if there's a more monotonous experience, but it's kind of like an NBA season where I wasn't going to ever phone in a single performance, because that of those 45 performances, somebody, that was the only time they were going to see it. So they had to get all of what I had each show, and that is draining. Um, so when I got into the self-expression portion of my creative endeavors, I learned about personal self-expression and poetry as a means of communicating ideas and healing and processing through art. And I
Yeah.
think that's why it dates back to cavemen and the drum patterns and the wall art, because we always have that. Humans have always had it, and every human has it. There's a need to express. There's a
Mm.
need to immortalize something that you did. Rick Rubin compares it to graffiti in a bathroom stall. It's
Uh,
your creativity is your I was here.
yeah.
And that's pretty powerful. And
Mhm.
I think that's a big thing. And then that's the first angle, but the other angle, and this is kind of more of a spiritual, kind of a more higher minded thing. I don't know if there's a thing that we do as human beings that is more in tune with other dimensions than music. I don't know if there's a thing that we take something from the ether, that takes something from thin air and brings it into the physical world in a way that affects and moves as much as music. It is such a universal language. It is such a connector of souls and minds and ideas and hearts. And I think it's so powerful.
I agree. I think it's essential because I think for a lot of people, they lack the verbiage and the words to say what they're really feeling. Um, even whether that's at a young age where you just don't know the vocabulary words, or you're at an adult age and you just don't know all the words, and then all of a sudden someone conveys what you're feeling in that perfect way. And then even just music
Mm.
without words, that you can convey a tone, a feeling in just instruments, and you can convey something. When you talk about like Castaway, the movie has like almost no talking in it for the longest time, but everything's conveyed through music, and it's beautiful, and it's this experience that a lot of us just don't. We don't know how to say that, but someone else does, and you go, "Yes, this is what I want." And it's someone else putting that universal language to our feelings, and we can connect with that. And I think that's huge. And so we talk about music, and music can really trigger memories. And
Mm.
why do you think we connect music to memories? And like, I'm sure there's for you, just like there is for me, there's songs where I hear, I'm like, oh, that takes me back to, you know, oh,
Yep.
this was my senior prom song, or like
Yeah.
this is junior high, right? This is me and the boys like riding around on our bicycles in junior high. Like,
Oh yeah.
why do you think music is so connected to memories?
And that's a fascinating question, and I think it really stems from the absolute, and I think the simple answer is the sensory
Yep.
experience of the song. It's the notes and the pitches. It creates a sensory experience that is memorable for us to recall, or like you said, the junior prom. For me, it was "Chasing Cars" by Snow Patrol. Great song.
Mm.
That was my prom song. Do you remember yours?
Senior prom was, I remember senior prom, but my ninth grade, like semi-formal was Truly Madly Deeply by, I believe Soundgarden or one of
Oh,
those.
look at
That,
that. Oh, look at that. Soundgarden's
yeah,
getting some shout outs.
I think it was Soundgarden. One of those bands, one of those,
I
alternative type bands.
and so to expand upon just like the simple answer of like sensory experience, those senses then I think evoke a nostalgic what was it like at that
Hmm.
time, right? And for me, you had a bad day. I sang for karaoke in front of my entire sixth grade class, and it endeared me to a lot of my class because I hadn't ever really opened up to a lot of these people, but I was very fearlessly belting at the top of my lungs. You had a bad day, and I had a new, level of camaraderie with people, and so that song, but it's the emotions that you connect to the sensory
Yeah.
experience, to the hearing. And we all have songs with exes, right? We all got songs,
Hmm.
that we can't listen to without thinking about an ex or without wanting to cry. It's so real that and that goes along with the connection that we have to music on a deeper level. It's that emotive, it's that deep emotional connection that we have to the music.
Yeah, and you brought up a word that I think is huge, and that's nostalgia. Like that, bringing
Yeah.
that up. Listen, if anybody could like synthetically create nostalgia and put it in a pill, that'd be like the top selling drug of all time. Like if you could take a pill and it triggered nostalgia, remember, right? That's
Dangerous.
why dangerous. That's why all the movies now are like franchises from when like me and you were kids, right? Like you get all these like Transformers and like they're just like what was this popular cartoon in the 80s and 90s? Let's make a movie about that because they know we'll buy it because we got the spendable income now and it's like nostalgia hits hard.
100%.
And music is a big part of that. You're right. It's like, man, what was that song? And oh, I remember this girl. I remember this
Yeah.
experience. Or right, and
Yeah.
that's just with there's. I remember going to a Bills game with my dad, and this song was on, and
Yep.
right, like Graceland, the album Graceland by Paul Simon for me
Good
is my
album.
dad.
Paul Simon. That's
It is
great.
a that's one of the few no skip albums out there in the world. I think there's
They
only a
are
handful
rare.
of no skip albums
They are rare.
to me. That album will always be linked to post senior year. Me and my dad driving to Kansas City for a competition for vacation. We like road trip from Jersey to Kansas City. We listened to that album like multiple times. Like he had it on CD. We listened to other stuff, but like that was to me that's the soundtrack of that trip. Like that was the soundtrack of that. Like, and so I love that album. Great, it's just a great album. It brings me back. Like I can listen to some old Garth Brooks and like I remember this is the first CD I bought and playing that over and over again. Or I remember going to this concert and seeing it. That nostalgia factor is huge. And I think we're all chasing that in everything we do. We chase it in movies, we chase it
Yep.
in music, we chase it in our purchases, we chase it in unhealthy things with drugs and alcohol. We chase that
Yeah.
nostalgia feeling because we want to capture the glory days of what was because we feel like we'll never be there again. And I
Eh,
love that music
yeah.
has that effect. And I also love that music can also just change your mood. Like it can amp you up. Like you listen to, you know, you know, Bohemian Rhapsody, one of those like rock songs, like that'll get you hype, right? But it can also calm you down. Like, and music is so vast that it can whatever you want to feel, you can find music in a forever playlist that'll make you feel like if you just want to feel melancholy all the time, you can find a playlist that'll just be like this playlist will make you sad forever.
It's a really, really fascinating point, and I liked what you said about the nostalgia thing because I do feel like, yeah, you see it sold everywhere, right? It's the 90s baby thing. Like it's such
Yep.
a basically a cliche at this point. Like, but honestly, like it's very real. And I said it to you earlier. Like I will be chasing the feeling I had when I started writing my own music
Hmm.
forever.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to chase it. And I think when I get close to it is when I have the most joy creating now, is when I get close to
Yeah.
that feeling of just it's almost like a kid on in a sandbox. It's almost like a
Yeah.
kid at recess who is, you know, got chalk and they're making their drawing in the
Yep.
on the driveway. That is the kind of art that I strive to capture myself and that I try to strive to help my clients capture. And you brought up, I think, being an artist, being a musician, it lends itself to sensitive souls, and that lends itself to uh things like you mentioned with like drugs and alcohol, which is why I've been sober for almost 4 years now. Because when you get in too deep, when you get too close to to that chase when you're chasing that too much. And it was also a thing for me with validation as well.
Mhm.
You're always trying to chase that feeling, and it you can't ever have it. Like, it's never, you know what I mean? It's at a certain point in time, you have to sort of just realize that that the way forward, there's going to be other great times too. The way forward is beautiful. As far as music amping or calming, that goes back to kind of like really interesting scientific thing, Dustin. Like, again, like,
Okay.
it's so weird how manipulative like, music is so manipulative. Like, it
Oh,
really
very
is.
much
Like,
so.
there is just certain combinations of notes or chords or instruments that will just evoke just tears. Like, you will
Yeah.
just cry. And the right placement of the right song in the right movie at the right time. I don't know about you, but it won't even be the climax of the movie. There won't be anything happening with the characters, but I'll just start crying and I'll just be like, what is going on? Like, why are my eyes leaking? Like, it's
Yeah.
so cruel, but it is music. And talk about getting amped, man. I don't know about you, but talk back to our sports team thing. These edits of these bills before every playoff game with these players, like, I saw one that was like set to Eminem's "Lose Yourself," and I was like, I'm not playing in this game, but the adrenaline I feel in my body, I want to.
Yeah. And I think that's why and going back to the nostalgia and chasing feelings, I think a big part of that is because we don't know this is a highlight moment of our lives. I
Mm,
think if someone said to you like, "Evan, tomorrow is gonna be a highlight day for you," you would be like, "Okay, I'm gonna soak it in." The problem is that you get past it, and then 2 days from now, you're like, "Oh, man, yesterday was like a highlight," and then you go and then something triggers that, and you just don't know it at the time, and that's why you're always chasing it. If you knew when they were, you wouldn't have to chase it. The problem is you don't know when they are, so when you miss them and they're past, you're like, "Oh," and then you get that feeling just to get you back. But you're right, the hype up of songs, right? That's why jock jams exist, right? Because those songs can get you hyped. That's why, I'm here in Wisconsin. We have jump around at the end of the start of the fourth quarter. That's why Renegade is played at Steelers games. That's why the Bills try to get Mr. Brightside to be their song.
that
It's just
was
like
awesome. I was into it.
it's a communal song that like just gets everyone hyped. And even though Mr. Brightside is not like to me like the most like hype up song,
No, it's not.
but like if people vibe with it, it creates this mood and it does create this almost communal experience as well of like
100%.
we are all singing Mr. Brightside together. And when you see, the clips of, someone singing a national anthem, music cuts out and the stadium sings it together, like there's something about it that's just like, oh man, that's powerful that we're all together and we're all on the
Beautiful.
same page.
Yeah.
And right, for better or for worse, like whether you want to get hype, whether you want to get calm, whether you want to be sad, like music can manipulate you in that way. But I think
Yeah.
when it's used right, it has such a huge impact. And I think music can have a big social impact as well from artists, when you talk like Bob Marley having a big social impact through his music,
Yeah.
why do you think music has the ability to have that kind of social impact where like, movies don't have that? Movies don't have that much of a social impact. TV shows don't have that, like, yes, they are like in the pop culture and they're in the zeitgeist of that, but they're not like making changes. I find there's songs and music that can just change kind of the world or the nation's feelings on certain things. And why do you think that is? Why do you think music can do that when other forms of entertainment and creation can't?
I think it has so much to do with what you already touched on with the tribal feeling of music.
Mhm.
Like, you can unite behind it. It's a rallying cry. I remember
Yeah.
um 2016, we had a tough year as a country and we listened to "We Gon' Be All Right." We gonna be
Yep.
all right. And it was an anthem. I wrote a paper in my protest and social change class analyzing "All Right" by Kendrick Lamar as a political speech. Um,
Yeah.
it's incredible. There's always going to be songs that I think to answer your question in a more direct way, I think music oftentimes is a reflection of the times and the state of the world. And
Mhm.
I think that creates a sense of community, and it furthers that feeling that we're not alone. It furthers that feeling of we are immortalizing or time stamping this period with this song that is resonating with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And more often than not, when that happens, it's a big hit and it's because it's a banger and it sounds great. But sometimes it's the message, man. Let it be, you know,
Yeah.
let it be. I'm trying to think of other ones throughout history.
I mean, even things like F the Police was like that
Yeah,
became an anthem
yeah.
for, people of color in that time frame. Like that And it's funny because sometimes it is a direct message, like that was directly what they're feeling, but sometimes like Let It Be was not a social commentary on any one
Yeah.
thing. It was just here's a song that was like, oh, this captures it. When
Yeah.
you talk about like Ohio by David Stills and Crosby and Nash, like that was
Yeah.
a song about a tragic event and that, but there are songs like Ball of Confusion by the Temptations, like I think just immortalize kind of like a general thought, and people are like, yeah, let's get behind that, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's part of it.
Rallying cry is a word that keeps coming to my mind.
Yep.
I'll say something in relation to what you said earlier about the good times, and if you knew it was going to be a good times day, like yada yada. I'm so fascinated by that idea, and there's this lyric that I put in The Edge of the World, which is the last song I released as the Kid Lavender, where I said, "It seems we're in remember when now." And I kind of feel like sometimes like when things are going good, you gotta try to like lock in. You know what I
Yep.
mean? You gotta try to you gotta try to send apply some mindfulness to the experience so that you will have it to recall, because there obviously will be bad times. And it reminds me of something Josh Radnor said in an interview with Rainn Wilson, where he
Mm.
said Rainn Wilson asked him, would you rather be happy or content? And Josh Radnor said, I'd rather be content. And Rainn Wilson said, why? And he said, because happiness is this contract that you signed that has a trade-off on the other side of it, and contentment doesn't. It's just
Yeah.
peace.
It's just peace.
Fascinating. That stayed with me, Dustin, and I wanted to share
Uh,
that with the listeners today, because that is something that in it related to our conversation about art and nostalgia and everything. That was something that kind of really, really resonated with me.
So interesting story. So I told you I went to a high school that was, one of the top uh, theaters high schools in the country. A former student wrote a book about it, and they made it into a TV show. And Josh Radnor played the lead. He actually played
No
my theater
way.
teacher in the
No
show
way.
that was on for like a year.
That is such a weird, what a weird,
What weird,
coincidence.
yes.
Yeah,
Um,
Josh Radnor's
so
great, man. How I Met Your Mother, great show,
yeah, so
underrated.
like it was after How I Met Your Mother. He did a show. I forget what it was called. I think it was like Rise or something.
I have to check it
Um,
out.
but it was only on for a season. But he played basically my theater teacher in like the early days of like basically
Wow.
small like blue collar town and like integrating musicals and doing some more edgy things like Hair and
That
stuff
sounds
like that they
awesome.
didn't want to see. So yeah, just funny that Josh Radnor, like Rosie Perez was in the show, so she would come to the high school and like my mom got to meet her and they would like do stuff
That's
and they
I'm
would
gonna have to go
talk
watch
speeches.
that. I'm gonna have to go
It's super
find that
cool.
show.
Yeah, so weird small world
That
situation.
is weird. Yeah, that's one of those weird,
Yeah.
yeah, degrees
Yeah,
of separation.
contentment's such a big thing I talk about a lot is like there's a fine line between contentment and complacency, and I never want to be
Definitely.
complacent, but I always want to be content. And
Absolutely.
you're right, happiness is the trade-off of at some point, if there's happiness, then there is unhappiness. And there is really no opposite of like uncontentment is a thing, but like if you can find contentment, there is no real trade-off for that. And I think that's huge.
Yeah, they say the price of love is loss, and that's just
Yeah.
such a ah, it's such a
It hurts
cruel.
even more after Sunday, right? Like
Oh, I know, right? Don't even. But it's such a cruel law of the universe, man. Man, why can't the price of love be more love? Why can't t- you know foods that are bad for you taste
bad.
right? Why does it have to be the
Yeah.
other one? Well, they
Yeah.
flipped it.
Vegetables taste horrible, but they're good for you. Yeah.
The universe is cruel like that.
It is cool like that. And I think that's part of like the difference between like consuming music and creating music. Like obviously you're creating music and you're using that as as a outlet for all your feelings and your expression. But I
Yeah,
think we do consume music for that as well. Finding a music that kind of fits our mood or will change our mood, right? I think a lot of times people are the previous, they're gonna go, well, I'm sad, so I want sad music instead of going, I'm sad, I want happy music.
yeah.
Um,
It
but you want
depends.
to have something that kind of yeah, I mean it depends. I think that's where the mindfulness comes in and finding a place like, hey, I'm sad right now, so let me put on some happy music to try to help change my mood instead of just wallowing in your sadness.
Yeah, I love the dichotomy that you bring up there, because I creating music has become such a part of my DNA that I sometimes forget about the process of music
Yep.
consumption independent of creating. But what I've really fallen in love with, and it's a little dangerous in a sense that I'm kind of a little bit removed from my experience as just a casual music listener, but really I look for inspirations based on albums that I want to make, and then I sort of will make a playlist with sort of like the reference tracks that we talked about. I'll make a playlist like when we were making Tanaka, there was a playlist of 50 songs, and they were all in the vein of what I wanted Tanaka to sound like, and that was all I listened to. And my next album, you brought up the word melancholy. My next album, I want it to be about a character that I'm creating called Mr. Melancholy, and I'm listening to music that has that vibe, and it's very weird, Dustin. It's a weird place to be because my consumption is meant to fuel my creativity, which it does. But then at a certain point, my consumption is also altered from the state how I fell in love with it.
And I think this part. So there's a book, "Steal Like an Artist" by Austin. I think it's Cleon.
Steal like an artist. That's cool.
Yeah, and he talks about in the book like there's a difference between imitation and inspiration. I think a lot of people create and they try to imitate someone.
Right.
Right. So whether that's in music, whether it's a fantasy football, creation, whether it's a podcast, they go,
Yeah.
this is what they do, so I'm going to do that. Like, this is what Mr. Beast does, so I want to make Mr. Beast videos. This is what, Taylor Swift does, so I want to make Taylor Swift music. And that's just imitation, and that's not okay. But inspiration is like you can go, hey, I'm inspired by these artists and these 50 songs, and they help me fuel that. And there's like a reference point of doing that. And I've talked about like, finding people in the fantasy football space where it's like, man, what they did is super cool. And it's like, oh, that inspired me to do this. And like and creating that idea and getting kind of this, what he talks about in this boost is called this, he calls it genius. So it's like it's this group, it's not group think, it's like the group people thinking together that creates more genius, right? So it's all of us getting together and going, hey, what about this? And you kind of, and you can kind of bounce some ideas, and because you guys are all there together, having separate voices and not being an echo chamber, but a lot of that allows you to all be kind of great and have some genius out of that. So
yeah, and that's one thing too that we haven't really specifically talked about, but I would be remiss if I didn't bring it up as part of Red Eye. That's one thing that having a producer like the producer that I have, he produced my first 2 albums, and we've produced them together. But and we've found a session instrumentalist, and also we kind of look at him as like our unofficial third member. That level of collaboration and that, like you mentioned, echo chamber, I consider it like I consider it like a committee, and every idea I have, voice memos, songs that I hear that catch me the right way that day, it's in the group chat, and there's a joy and a level of bonding that I didn't know was possible with people that I have experienced through creating music with people. It's similar to theater in a sense of like they're like my family, like and the trust that I have in them because of what they've earned through their time serving me as producers or as collaborators, and vice versa, right? I can only hope that people, clients, or them, the people who I'm working with, feel the same way about me, because I just want to create a safe space to. I'm a big believer in yes and, which is an improv philosophy, and I'm a big believer in compliment sandwich. I will never listen to something that a gift that an artist has given me, like, hey, I'm sharing you this piece of vulnerability that I was brave enough to put on recording or brave enough to write down. I will never look at that and like criticize it before I find something I like about it, because that vulnerability is worth its weight in gold.
I'm a big believer in crazy ideas. So a lot of times that I'm in meetings, I'm training the guy.
You are.
Okay, I'm a guy. I have a guy at work that I'm training right now, and I'm like, "What's the crazy idea for this?" He's like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "What's the crazy solution? Like, what's the money is no option?
Yeah.
Everything's available, unlimited resources. What's the crazy solution, right? Because you just never know what that's going to be, and that allows that kind of like, this is super crazy, but maybe we can take a part of that, and then you can kind of backtrack it and find something that works. So I'm big on that.
Yeah. Creating without boundaries.
Yep. Wendy, hi. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you.
Oh, Wendy. I know Wendy. What's up, Wendy?
You know Wendy? Yeah, Wendy's awesome. So
She's the goat.
let's get into our draft. We are going to do a 4-round draft of artists, bands, whatever that we want to do the halftime show at the Super Bowl. We have, I believe, Drake this year.
Kendrick Lamar. Come on. Was
One
that a
of the
joke?
two? I don't know. One of the two.
Wait, was that a joke?
I can't remember which one it is.
Kendrick Lamar. If he wasn't already doing the halftime show, he would have been my 101. He's an incredible artist.
I know it was one of the two that were beefing, and I couldn't remember which one it was.
you flip a coin, Dustin.
Flip a coin. It's one of the two. I did. And I got the wrong one.
That's funny.
As the guest, I will let you decide if you want to go first or you want to be the second one in a snake draft. What do you want?
I'd like to clarify some things. I will.
Yes.
If you give me the choice. Oh, that's really risky because there's okay. Can they be? Does it have to be real? Does it have to be realistic?
Realistic and like they have to be alive.
Okay, I was gonna ask that, alive or dead. So they have to
Yes,
be
they have to
alive.
be alive. They have to be available theoretically for next
So I
year.
can't just get them in their prime. Like, I couldn't take like a band from say the 20s.
No, you couldn't do that.
Okay, word. Just had to clarify because
I
that.
will also allow reasonable like a reasonable collaboration, if you would
Okay,
say. So
fair,
if you're like,
fair.
hey, I want here's one that I saw when I was doing some research. If you're like, I want to have one that's like all American Idol win, like American Idol
Oh, that's cool. Yeah,
contestants.
something like that.
Something
Yeah,
like if you want something where it's a reasonable reason why they would be together, I think that's fine. Like if you want Beyonce and Jay-Z, I think that's fine.
I got to be honest with you, man. I had both the Beatles and Queen on my list. I was hoping I could get Alive or Dead. I don't. I think that rules them both out. Freddie's gone. John's gone. We're good. We'll take them off. But they were both on my list because I'm a huge
Well,
fan. And you know what I'm saying? What's the smile for? Are you going to try to get Queen without Freddie? Is that what? Is that what?
yeah, I'll take Queen without Freddie. Yeah.
I guess we'll have to see. No spoilers, but I'll cross them off. I want
Okay.
people at their peak powers.
All right. So do you want to go first or second?
I want the second pick since the Beatles are out of play.
Okay.
That's what I
So
was
I've
thinking
got the
too.
first pick.
Yeah.
And so when I'm thinking about a halftime show, what I want is someone who has mass appeal, right?
Yeah.
I would love to get, the Kid Lavender on there, right? Who I maybe enjoy, but it doesn't have the mass appeal, right? So I'm looking for someone who
Yeah.
has mass appeal. Also, I want someone who's going to be enough energy, right? Like I think John Mayer's cool, but like John Mayer's too chill for
Love
me.
John Mayer, bro. Yeah, he crossed my mind. He crossed my
He's
mind for
great.
this.
He's got great music, but like that's just going to be like a halftime show.
Have you ever heard his In Your Atmosphere live song? I don't think he ever
No,
recorded
I
it,
don't
but
think I have.
I'm gonna send it to you after this. It's one of the best.
Also, if we're talking no skip albums, Room for Squares, no skip album, hands down.
Come on.
So my first pick, I'll take I think is a goat, and that's Garth Brooks. I think he has mass
Yeah.
appeal beyond country. I think he still, even at this age, is still a great performer. Obviously, he sells it everywhere he goes. He knows how to put on a high energy, high impact show, even if it's just for 20 minutes.
Yeah, man. I do love the pick, and it's not for my personal taste. Like I said, country's probably my least favorite genre. I used to say I hate it. I've grown out of my hatred for
Yeah.
country. I've experienced the light. I've seen the joy that country music can bring. I went to a Western themed bar for my girlfriend's birthday last year, and I learned that there's a reason why the lyrics are so simple. It's because 70 people have to be able to scream them at the top of their lungs while they are blasted.
It's not deep, like thought provoking music. It's just like,
Sometimes it can be.
sometimes it can be, but a lot of times it's just, well, I like to sit here and drink a beer. Like that's okay.
Right, absolutely. There's no shame in just some good old fashioned enjoyment.
But I'll take Garth Brooks. I think Garth Brooks would have a hard time paring down into a 20-minute set.
Yeah.
I could also see Garth doing like, hey, I'm gonna do halftime, and then I'm gonna do a concert after the show, and we're just gonna rock out.
Yeah, and it's my understanding that he's one of the greatest performers, recording artists, yada yada of all time. So maybe
It
you'll
is,
have
and
to make
his
a playlist
shows
for
are
me.
phenomenal. I've been to
You'll
one
ha-
show, and it's the best show I've ever seen.
Yeah, you'll have to make a playlist for me because I have been asleep on the Garth Brooks train. So I get
You
two
get two
picks
now. Yep.
back to back, and I'm really excited about it because my 101, which would have been the Beatles, my feasible 101 in this world is somebody who I have not yet had the pleasure of seeing perform in my life, but really dating back to their start in music and evolving through. They had one of the most public displays of musical growth I've ever seen. I would like to see Childish Gambino play the halftime show
Okay.
of the Super Bowl. And you want to talk about mass appeal? Redbone is one of the biggest songs of the 21st century, seemingly of all time, I believe. He's still got it. He made a new album this past year, had some of his best music on it. He had a tour, and I had tickets to the tour, but he had a health emergency.
Oh,
So I have not yet seen him, and I'm getting a little impatient, but I'm such a huge Childish Gambino fan from the album Because the Internet to his funk album Awaken My Love to his newest album, which I think had, I'll say, more hits than misses, but had some misses for me. I believe it was called, man, I don't even remember what it was called. It was, Bando Stone in the New World. It was the soundtrack for his movie that I think might be postponed due to his health issues. But are you a Childish Gambino fan?
I am not a huge fan. I believe he covered a pseudo Garth Brooks song that's just phenomenal.
Oh yeah, he does that. Yeah, his voice is he's got a next level voice. And he's a next level talent. Love his acting in TV shows too. So
Yeah,
Childish
he covered "Lost in You," which is from the Chris Gaines album, which is like the pseudo Garth Brooks album. He
that's
covered it, and
cool.
it's a phenomenal cover.
Oh, it's got that soul, man. He's just got that
Yeah,
voice,
that
man.
soul. Yep.
He's got another level. Now, my number 2 pick, I'm gonna trust that you're not gonna steal one of my picks, so I'm gonna come
Okay.
back because I have one that's a little more avant-garde, a little more off the wall. But I think this group, I don't think you'll take them, but I feel like I can't risk you taking them because they're more popular and they
Okay.
have some of the biggest hits of our lifetimes. And I'm in a pop punk phase. I'm gonna stick in the pop punk realm, and I'm gonna pick Green Day with my second pick.
I thought about Green Day, wasn't on my list. I think they're at the point now where so Childish Gambino for me lacks the appeal for a 40-plus-year-old white men.
It's possible. My dad loves them.
I just think like mass appeal. I think Green Day is the point where like most people know who they are, know enough of their songs. Like they are played at like your supermarkets and your dentist a little bit. Like you'll
Yeah,
hear a little bit of that. So I
but
think
more
they're a good pick.
energy, more energy than your average dentist chair music. But
Yes.
American Idiot, Holiday, and that's just their '04 stuff. Like think
Yeah.
about
I
like
think if
we got Brain Stew, Dookie, we got
I think if you were to turn on like the whatever the radio station that is on at the dentist, I think every once in a while you're going to hear a Green Day song. You're like, oh, this is a little bit more
absolutely,
upbeat than I'm used to. I think
absolutely.
that's
I
a bad
love
pick.
Green Day. Love Green Day.
So now I get 2 picks. We
Correct.
talked about them already. We'll take Queen.
Okay.
Even
Yeah.
even with Adam Lambert, I think
Okay.
he's done a good enough job as a
Yeah.
replacement. Obviously, he's
Yeah.
not Freddie Mercury, but I think
That's
still
the
having Brian May and the rest of I want them before the rest of them start dying. I think he's been there long enough where he is good enough and he's cemented himself as like it's not like it's not a revolving door from it. It's like it's been Adam Lambert for I don't know, seems like 20 years now. I think he's good enough, and I think they put on a good enough show, and they have enough recognizable hits. And I think they could do, maybe they do a hologram of Freddie Mercury or something. Like I think they could make it really cool. I would love to see Queen.
It was on my list, and I would have picked it if I could have got the All-Star cast.
If you could get Freddie, I think that's the hand downs 101. I think if you could get Freddie back,
I'd still want the Beatles, but they would be my 102 if I could get Freddie.
I just don't like the Beatles.
Dustin,
I'm just
my
sorry.
brother,
Sorry, man.
we gotta
I'm sorry.
no, we gotta fix that.
I think here's my quick rant on the Beatles. I think their early stuff was good. I think they got to the point where I think a lot of artists get to where it's like, we'll just do whatever the heck we want and people buy because we're that big. Like I think we see a lot of these people. So Garth Brooks did it when he did the Chris Gaines album. He's like, I'll do this pseudo alternate personality. I think the Beatles got their and since like they just started doing like Yellow Submarine, like we're just gonna make crazy songs that make no sense
But if
because
we're
people buy
talking
because we're
about,
the Beatles.
but if we're talking about the spirit of artistry, right, Dustin? Maybe that's a good
Yes,
thing. Maybe their creative freedom was a good thing.
that's fine. You can be creatively free, but don't expect like it just became a massive hit because of who they were, not because the song on itself was good. And that's what bothers me.
There's definitely a component of that all throughout with quote unquote fame that kind of or
Yes.
influence that kind of
Well, yes, a lot of them get there.
quality doesn't really matter once you're at a certain level. People are
Yep.
going to buy it and whatnot. But I can't agree with that take on the Beatles. I think their avant-garde weird stuff is some of their best stuff.
It's not for
Lucy
me.
in the Sky with Diamonds is one of the best songs ever made.
It's an okay song, but like it doesn't make any sense.
But that's the point.
No,
You sound like my
no.
engineer today. I had a session with my engineer today, and he said, "What does this mean?" And I was like, "Nothing. That's the point, bro."
It's like they just like they had some like AI generators like just spit out a bunch of words and it was like Lucy Sky Diamonds. It's like oh, okay, that's a song. Ta-da! Like that's what it
so
sounds like
funny.
to me.
That's funny.
So I have Garth Brooks and Queen even without Freddie Mercury.
Yeah.
I get one pick, then you get 2 picks, and I get one more.
Yeah.
This is going to sound strange, but I'll take Ed Sheeran. I think
I think it's a good pick.
good enough.
Knowing your love for him, I think it's a good pick.
I think he can put on enough like energy and fun show that he would get the crowd involved, and the way he does, we could do a show in a short 20-minute set. I think he could bring enough energy. He's got enough recognizable songs that I think it'd be mass appeal for the moms, the kids. I think everyone would like it. I think he could bring out a ton of like when you see this show where he did the cover of Eminem and Eminem came out. Like I've seen that video a bunch of times. I think he's big enough. He could get all kinds of cool guests to do some cool covers and collabs. I think it'd be a really good show.
I love the pick. I definitely think you're He's not short on hits. That's
No,
for
he's
damn
not short
sure.
of hits.
He won't run out of hits. He'll have bangers on bangers. He'll have stage presence. He'll have
Yep.
talent, which is a nice component, right? Of
Yeah.
you're booking a halftime show for the Super Bowl. You don't want to lip sync. You don't want a little
Yeah.
sideshow. You got a guy who can carry the load from a talent perspective. He can carry the load from a hit perspective. You talked about energy. I don't know if it's necessarily the right energy, but we've
Maybe
seen.
not the right, but I think he could bump it up for a show.
I think you're right. I don't hate the pick whatsoever, and even more so, I don't hate the pick given your fandom for Ed Sheeran. I got two
Your
more
last
picks.
two.
I got two more picks, and I gotta make a business decision here, okay? Because I got like some personal nerdy bands that I'm like, oh,
Yep.
I need to see them, but it's not really like I'll say some honorable mentions because I'm pretty confident you're not going to pick them. But like, I don't know if you've ever heard of '90s power pop band Jellyfish.
No.
It's fine. They would be on my list personally, but that's personal. I don't. If I'm stepping on your toes here, I apologize because I'm not going to
No,
pick
go
him.
ahead.
But Robbie Williams,
I mean, I like some of Robbie Williams stuff. I don't think he has enough
he
hits.
is so good, and his movie where he's a CGI monkey is amazing. If you haven't seen it yet, go see it. I know
I've not seen that.
it's been getting ridiculed, but it's a phenomenal film. But I would have picked him, but it's like I said, it's a little personal. This isn't
Yep.
the World Cup. This isn't FIFA.
Yeah.
This is American football, and Robbie
Football,
Williams is
yep.
bigger international. So I had to give the love there. My next pick is maybe the biggest name we're going to talk about in terms of hits and in terms of magnitude of their reach as an artist, and maybe the most talented that we've spoken on yet. I'm a huge fan of this person, and I think they would bring out some killer guests. I got to go with Lady Gaga.
She did the halftime already.
Did she already do the halftime show?
She did halftime like 5 years ago.
I think you're right, and I'll retract because that's fair.
Okay.
I didn't even know, but I was like, Lady Gaga, man, like she's got the hits.
She did a good halftime. She really did.
I'm not remembering that, but I think you're right though.
Because I think she started at like the top of the stadium and then like rappelled down or whatever.
Oh, that sounds like something she would do. Okay, then I got a better one.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Now I'm gonna run into a world of just did they do the halftime show? How about this? This is a fun one. How about Rick Rubin and Friends?
Okay.
Anyone that Rick Rubin's ever produced for. So I'm talking. I got Eminem. I got Chili Peppers. I got the Beastie Boys. I got a mass grand Rick Rubin's greatest hits.
That as like a collaboration, like it's the Rick Rubin show, right? Because I'm thinking you get Stevie Wonder. You probably get all those guys. Wouldn't surprise me.
I don't know his I know I'm confident he did some songs with Eminem, he did most of the Chili Peppers albums. I think he did some songs. Yeah, I think Rick Rubin and Friends, like that themed show. I think that would be kind of like you talked about you were gonna give me some leeway with creativity on the. So I think Rick Rubin and Friends I'll take, and you'll have to find a clever way to market that so that people know what that means, because I don't know if a lot of people know who Rick Rubin is.
I mean, you're talking. You've got Beastie Boys,
Chili Peppers,
DMC, LL Cool J, Public Enemy, Gaga, Adele, Kesha.
I just want Rubin and Friends. We can call it, and you can find your creative way to get people to know what that means, because it's kind of it's a cheat code a little bit. And then I'll close it out, and my last pick, and this is my personal pick, and I'm not going to shy away from it. I'm not going to shy away from it because they do have the hits, and I've seen them live twice, and it was the two greatest performances I've ever seen.
Okay.
They might not have an extreme mass appeal to a younger crowd, but I want Tears for Fears on that stage.
Okay.
Shout, let it all out. Everybody wants to rule the world. Something happens and I'm head over heels. Some of the greatest songs ever written, and one of the greatest vocalists, Roland Orzabal, one of the greatest songwriters, Kurt Smith, their anthemic style and sound at the Super Bowl. It would be a legacy show for sure. It would be kind of like when Tom Petty did it. It would be kind of more along those lines. But their new material is phenomenal as well. I'm not sure if you've listened to any of it, but
I have not.
They're still churning out great music, and that's my least popular and my weirdest pick, but I gotta say it with my chest. I think they'd kill it.
I think I loved when they were doing the U2, Tom Petty, those older bands, and like
it was fun.
Hey, these are legends. Let's get them back, and I think we need to get back to that. I think they've tried to get to the MTV pop of like this is the biggest artist. Now, like I'd love to see the legends. That's why I think Queen is on there, Garth Brooks. My last pick, I'm struggling because I think there's an obvious choice that neither of us really want to say, and that's Taylor
Kanye?
Swift.
Oh,
No, Taylor Swift. I think Swift.
yeah,
is
she's
a big
great
name. She's great. Like you can hate her all you want. She would put on a banging show.
for sure.
I think there's a couple other big names, right? We could talk Billy Joel if you want to talk legends.
Oh yeah, Billy Joel's great.
I've already got Garth Brooks, so that kind of puts Luke Combs and Luke Bryan kind of off the radar, like some other country acts. Keith Urban, who I absolutely adore, Kenny Chesney, like those kind of guys. I
Yeah,
think would off if you got Garth Brooks.
yeah.
I'm torn because I really want to give love to one of the ladies, and I have 3 on my list, and I don't think I'm going to take any of them. I think Taylor Swift
Wow.
is huge. Obviously, would be huge. I'm a massive Kelly Clarkson fan. I think she
Oh
could
yeah,
just rock it out. Like she is just
yeah,
amazing. For some reason, she's all over my Twitter feed for some reason right now.
yeah.
And I think Pink could do a really good show. Like she's
Oh
known for
hell
her high
yeah,
energy.
yeah,
If I was gonna pick a woman, it would probably be Britney Spears, just because that is nostalgia. Like when you're talking nostalgia, that's like
yeah. But
Britney Spears. Like
is she still doing it at a high level though?
I don't care.
I think that
I
kind of
don't.
matters
Crazy. I don't care.
because we're doing it in a real world, right? We're doing it in a
Yes,
real right. So you that's gonna be you got the variable there
I think she could come out and do a good show.
and kill it.
For
Okay.
my last pick, I'm gonna pick a band or a group that I think would put on an awesome show. I think it'd be a huge seller because they're getting back together. And you're probably gonna be shocked at this. I'm gonna take Outkast.
Oh, that's a great pick. That's a phenomenal pick.
Dude, Hey Ya
Oh,
at a
such
Super
a
Bowl?
good song. Yeah.
Like
Hey,
close out the show with Hey Ya, like
hey,
the
ya,
whole crowd,
it's one of the greatest
ladies,
songs ever
yeah!
made.
Like
It,
that would
yeah,
just be phenomenal.
such a
I
good
think
pick.
you get them back together. I think that would be like a highlight. I think that'd be the thing. I mean, I would love to see NSYNC. We kind of saw them once already. Britney's done a little bit of it here and there. I think Outkast would just be, especially if we get a Super Bowl in Atlanta, like at the Mercedes-Benz Dome again. Like
Yeah.
that would just be like what
I
we
love
saw
Andre
with.
3000. He's top 10
Yeah,
for me.
like
Top
he's
5
like, and I
maybe.
think what I saw in LA when they had Dre and Snoop and Eminem did the West Coast thing in LA, like that was mass appeal.
It was so
Maybe not
cool.
as much as some of the other people, but like it was local. So I think if you had a Super Bowl in Atlanta, I think next year it's in San Francisco. So maybe after that it goes back to Atlanta, which is a plausible thing.
Yeah.
Outkast playing at the Super Bowl in Atlanta is a banging halftime show.
I love it, man. And I'm thinking like, some of their best songs are like not even like big hits. Like I mean,
Yeah.
they got so many and so many good albums. ATLians like Stankonia. Like there's so much to choose from. And man, Andre is just a next level creative, man. He's one of the most influential rappers of all time.
And then right, they would bring in all kinds of cool guests, and they would just
Oh,
do all this
definitely.
and they would just their stage presence would just be fun.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a banging show. So
Yeah.
I went with Garth Brooks, Queen, Ed Sheeran, and Outkast. You did Childish Gambino, Green Day, a Rick Rubin and Friends, and then Tears for Fears. I think those are 8 shows that I'm all in for. Let's book it the next 8 years.
That's kind of a
Give us a call.
nasty.
We'll book it up. Yeah.
That's kind of it's kind of a nasty matchup. Like I don't know if you do polls or whatever, but I feel like we're gonna have some. It's gonna be divisive. Like there's some bold ones. Leaving Taylor off was hard.
It's hard.
Madonna's done it right.
Ooh.
She would have been on my list.
I don't know if Madonna's done it.
Madonna
that.
would have been on my list. She's really good. There was somebody else who I was thinking of when we were talking. Oh, who I think is a future name to watch for this? I don't think he quite has the catalog yet, but I think if
Yes, she did do the halftime show.
I thought she
Madonna
did.
has done it.
So kind of rules her out. I think in the next handful of years, I'm not sure how into his work you are. If you're not, we'll do some exchanging. But Tyler, the Creator, within the next couple years, I think he could earn a spot on this list. He's making phenomenal music at year in and year out.
Yeah, I don't think there's no shortage, and especially with new people coming out, I don't think there's a shortage of bands that could do. That's why I would love to get back to doing some of these legends and let some of these other let
Give me some
Kendrick
legacy
Lamar and
acts.
Drake. Yeah, give me
Yeah.
some legacy and let a guy like Childish Gambino kind of put a few more hits out there and build
Yeah.
his resume. I think we're a lock for Taylor Swift in the next 2 years. I don't see how
Ugh.
that doesn't happen.
She's good, man. She is. Her music's great. You know, like there's like some songs of Taylor's that like when I hear them, I'm just like, man, that girl gets it. Like
Yeah.
she's a good songwriter,
Yep.
talented singer. But the Chiefs connection is just it's a little too fresh for me.
I mean, I think you're gonna have to wait for Travis to retire before they give it. I mean,
Probably.
if they stay together,
We'll
who knows?
see.
But
We'll see.
I think like Miley would have been good, but like Miley, I think just has a little too much negativeness around her, and she can just be a little wild. And I'm
Yeah,
not sure
she's
the NFL
crazy.
wants that. She's a
I feel
little
like
crazy.
it would be a little chaotic.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could do. I wouldn't mind if they just did like a '90s, like just
Yeah.
do decades, like just do a '90s, like '90s one hit wonders, like even
Yeah.
just like not like '90s stars, like give me some like Nelly for like two
Yeah.
songs, and then give me like Backstreet for two songs, and then like give me
Bring out Third Eye
Hoobastank or
Blind.
something. Yeah, Third Eye Blind. Like you could just do this like '90s mashup, and I
Yeah.
wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind that either.
The only group that I had written down that did not get brought up that admittedly was just very much again kind of mass appeal would suffer, but I think the show would be absolutely phenomenal is the Gorillas.
Oh yeah, for real, they would put on a great show.
They totally crossed my mind, but they really have Feel Good Inc. Do they have any
Yeah,
other like big hits?
yeah, that's really it. Yeah,
I think it's just Feel Good Inc.
yeah,
And it's a great song, but they have such better songs, and their newer albums are so good. And but I think it would be awesome, like the animation style and all that cool
yeah.
creative stuff that guy. I think his
Yeah,
name's
with especially
Damien.
now with like the augmented reality and stuff they can put on the screen, I
Oh,
think it'd be huge.
bro,
I thought about bands like Pearl Jam, but like
yeah,
again, it's just like it's chill. It's too like
yeah.
and
All,
mumbly.
also, not all the way there in terms of like. Well, that's not true. Pearl Jam's pretty massive. They had some massive songs,
Head.
but
Well, yeah, but they all sound the same. It's
I was gonna say I kind of think they're a little overrated. That's my hot take on them.
yeah, and like I feel the same way about Dave Matthews Band. Like it's just kind of
Say I'm
like
not a fan. Not a fan of
I'm
Dave
not.
Matthews
I
Band.
just. But again, like, are they the same thing with John Mayer? They're just not the right vibe, and I
Yeah.
don't think they could pick up the vibe for a halftime show.
Oh man, but
So
John Mayer, would he kill it though? Would it be? Oh hey, you ever listen to Frank Ocean?
yeah, Frank Ocean's good.
He's one of my all-time favorites. I think Frank. I mean, he's reclusive. Like I don't know if you could nail him down. He might not show up. Like
Yeah, it just doesn't show up.
I love Frank Ocean, and he would have been on my list for personal choices. But
Yeah.
again, he hasn't released an album since 2016. So
Yeah, like I love the Jonas Brothers, but like again, I think they need a few more hits together, like before they do a show.
time, a little more.
Like Adele is phenomenal, but again, not the right vibe. It's all these like soft like
You know
ballads. It's just
what?
not.
Harry Styles. We slept on Harry Styles. He would put on
I
a
don't
hell of
hate
a
Harry Styles,
that you could do the One
but
Direction stuff, like there would be like some emotional stuff regarding the Liam Payne
yeah,
passing.
I think that'd be. I mean, Harry Styles is good. I don't. Again,
His
I
solo
think
work
he's
is phenomenal.
he's
He's
one of
got
those
some
guys who
great
just
stuff
needs like
out
a
there.
few more years to put out. Like, give him another two albums with 2 or 3 hits. I think we're good. So
Absolutely. Well, wow, we really covered the gauntlet, I think.
we did. We sure did. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for coming on. Before we
So
get out of
happy
here,
to.
one last time, tell everybody where they can find you and what you got going on.
Hell yeah. So my name's Kevin Phillip Fox. My personal Twitter is at the Buffalo Trill. My music production company Twitter is Red Eye Music House without the E in house. I make solo music under the name The Kid Lavender, Lavender with no vowels. So that's The Kid LVNDR. And it would mean a lot to me if you would stream The Kid Lavender music. We got Seasons out from a couple years back. We got The Edge of the World, which is the newest single. We have an album, Tanaka, coming very soon.
So I can't wait to hear it. Kevin, thank you so much for going on. Thank you for
Thank you, Dustin. This was awesome.
and Red Eye Music House for doing the intro and outro. It's been a banger every time I listen to it. I
Our
text her,
honor.
I'm like,
It is such a banger. I should turn it into
it's
a
such a
full
banger.
song. Turn it into a
You
full
should
song.
turn it into. Go
Why
ahead.
not? Let's
So,
go.
thank you all for tuning in as we talk music. Thank you for listening. Hit that like and subscribe. Really helps me grow the podcast. Maybe one day we'll get Ed Sheeran on here and we can talk some stuff with
Just
Ed
make
Sheeran.
sure
You
I'm
never
there.
know.
Just make sure you invite me for that one.
Ed, I know you're watching Ed Sheeran. Hit me up. Let's all go. We'll get Rick
Yeah.
Rubin. Rick Rubin, I know you're watching too,
My
so
boy.
hit us up. Hey, thank you everyone for watching, and we will see you all next time.